Let's update you on the developing political situation in Israel right now. The deadline for Yesh Atid leader Yair Lapid to tell President Rivlin that he is able to form a coalition government and install right-winger Naftali Bennett as Prime Minister is midnight tonight Israel time. Benjamin Netanyahu is fighting to hold on to power though. Netanyahu needs only a few defectors to undercut the coalition enough so it cannot seal a majority in the Knesset and could force Israel to yet another election. It's fifth, yes, fifth, in 2 years. Let's bring in George Bisharat now. He's a professor of law at UC Hastings College of the Law, joining us from San Francisco this morning. And Professor, thank you so much for your time. As you've just heard there, the clock is ticking. Tell me, do you think this coalition, united by few things other than a desire to oust Netanyahu, is going to be able to come together and form a government and ultimately install Naftali Bennett as Prime Minister?
Well, it's very hard to say. All of the different party factions and the members are wrangling over different positions, control over different ministries and the like. And it's hard to know for sure whether they will reach an agreement. But I think they are strongly motivated, on the one hand, by their antipathy for Benjamin Netanyahu and by their strong desire to get past the political impasse that Israel has been facing for the last 2 years. So I think there is a decent chance that an agreement will be reached.
Sorry, Professor, finish your thought.
I said I think there's a decent chance that the agreement will be reached because of the strong motivation of the parties to oust Netanyahu and to get past the political impasse that Israel has been facing for the last 2 years.
Okay, so help us understand that a little bit further, particularly as it relates to the Palestinians, which is an area of work that you have studied extensively. Tell me what the Naftali Bennett playbook is when it comes to the Palestinians, because this is someone who has previously advocated for further annexation. He's someone who has suggested that a two-state solution simply would not work. What's your view on how he might move this conversation forward?
Well, it looks like if the deal as described in the press goes forward, he will be the first prime minister until 2023. And yes, he's a hardliner. He has boasted of having killed Arabs and plenty of Arabs, and doesn't seem to bother him morally in the slightest. So it does not bode well for Palestinians on the ground, either in the occupied territories or Palestinian citizens of Israel. On the other hand, there may be some mitigation provided by other parties that will be joining this coalition, and which may control, internal security, police officials and the like. And it is conceivable that that Bennett's tendencies, at least as to internal control of Palestinians, will be blunted somewhat. But I do think we're heading into a period in which Israel could be really swimming upstream against a strong current in the international community that is really tired of Israel's antics and its attacks on the Gaza Strip, its discriminatory treatment of Palestinians wherever they are, essentially forming an apartheid system within Israel and the occupied territories that the international community won't abide by.
Indeed, and it feels like the international community and indeed many people around the world are now paying closer attention to the plight of the Palestinians. What do you think this means for the future prospects of a two-state solution? And does Israel need American mediation when it comes to the Palestinian question?
There will never be a two-state solution. There will never be a two-state solution because Israel, with the backing of the United States, has essentially killed that opportunity because of via the settlement program, which has now established 700,000 settlers in the West Bank in more than 200 settlements. Those settlers will never be withdrawn. There's no political force within Israel or outside of Israel that will ever cause their return to Israel itself. And without that return, there is no possibility of the creation of a genuinely sovereign Palestinian state in the tiny islands of land that remain between those settlements. So we are headed for a period in which I think that the international community is going to have to come to the realization that there is currently a one-state reality in which Israel is the sole meaningful sovereign and in which only Jewish citizens currently have full rights of citizenship. The question going forward will be, is Israel going to continue to be governed by these principles of what Human Rights Watch recently called a regime of Jewish domination, in which the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem referred to as a regime of Jewish supremacy? Are we going to go forward with that, or are we going to transform that country into a state for all of its citizens with equal rights for both Palestinian Arabs and Israeli Jews? And I think that, the moral appeal of equality is actually quite strong. And even though it seems like a distant goal at this moment, things can change quickly. And I think that's likely where we're headed.